You are making the world a better place by listening to the Joy of Living podcast. This is your guide to achieving a more purposeful, powerful, and positive life. Join Barry Shore in unlocking the best version of you and becoming happier, healthier, and wealthier. And now, here's your ambassador of joy, Barry Shore.
Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved, immortal beings, and good-looking people. Remember, you're good-looking. So always looking for and finding the good. We're going to find good and abundance today. This is going to be a wondrously important, powerful, deeply interesting, maybe even disturbing podcast. It's a special edition. Your host is me. Usually we have a guest, but today I'm the guest. And we're going to be discussing a most remarkable, sensitive, timely issue. I'll tell you what it is in just a moment. But first of all, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here, for tuning in. As you do every single week, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people throughout the world tune into the Joy of Living podcast, because you know that on this podcast, we discuss the three great fundamentals of life. And when you live with these three fundamentals, the result is you become happier, healthier, and wealthier. And who doesn't want that? So first, again, I want to say thank you for utilizing your most valuable asset, which is your time, to be here, to learn about you becoming the best you and what you can do in the world to bring about world peace, harmony, build more bridges, create more joy, more happiness, more love in the world, which again is going to benefit you indirectly and directly. So let's talk about, first of all, the three fundamentals of life. And I'll tell you why I'm so eager to speak with us all today. With us. Again, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people throughout the world in various backgrounds, countries, etc. The three fundamentals of life are number one, life. Your life has purpose. And when you lead a purpose-driven life, number two happens. Now, in this case, a good number two. You go MAD. Now, MAD is a wonderful acronym. It stands for make a difference. You lead a purpose-driven life, you make a difference in the world. And the third fundamental is to uncover the power and the secrets of everyday words and terms. And by doing so, again, you'll be happier, healthier, and wealthier. What's a simple example? Right now, this show is being carried around the world over the internet. Ask anybody, what does www stand for? Invariably, they'll tell you it has to do with the internet. And factually speaking, they're correct. Now, of course, in our world, the world of the positive, purposeful, powerful, and pleasant, www stands for what a wonderful world. And what is a word, right? WHETA. And whenever you hear the opening bars to that song, again, a big thank you to Louis Armstrong, Satchmo, for enabling that song to go viral around the world and touch not just tens of millions or hundreds of millions, but billions of people on the planet. What a wonderful world. What do you do right away when you hear that opening bars of the song? You smile. Now, smile is one of the most important words you can ever internalize, utilize, and leverage in your life, because smile stands for seeing miracles in life every day. Seeing miracles in life every day, the ability to see miracles in life every day, no matter the circumstances. So I'm going to let the cat out of the bag, as we say, and tell you what the title of today's show is. We're going to date it. And then I'm going to talk about a little bit about miracles in your individual life. So the title of today's podcast, The Joy of Living, is Why the Jews? That's right. Why the Jews? Why do things happen to Jews? What is it about Jews that gets people so riled up so that they need to go and slaughter and create atrocities? And it's not just right now on October the 7th, 2023. It's been going on for a long time. thousands of years, as a matter of fact. What is it about Jews that gets people so angry? We're going to answer the question, by the way. You're going to be surprised, I bet. Matter of fact, there'll be a number of surprises that we're going to talk about. So I'm going to be discussing history. I'm going to give you opinion also. But most everything I'm going to tell you is based in history, historical fact. And I urge you, if you find that I am in any way incorrect, let me know. I am very good about checking for accuracy, but even I can make a mistake. Oh, hello, or speak incorrectly. So I'm going to tell you a quick story about seeing miracles in life every day. Imagine, if you can, standing up in the morning completely healthy, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, and that evening being in the hospital totally, completely paralyzed. Now, I mean paralyzed, by the way, from the neck down. That was me. And it was not an automobile accident. It was not a spinal injury. It was a rare disease took over my body. I never heard of it the day before, and rendered me what's called a quadriplegic. Nothing in my body moved from the neck down. All I could do was blink my eyes to communicate. I was 144 days in the hospital. I was in my hospital bed in my own home for 2 years. I couldn't turn over by myself. I was in a wheelchair for 4 years. I had braces on both my legs, my hips, my ankles, and that was progress. Thank God today I'm able to be vertical and ambulatory with the help of a 7-foot walking wand. So I'm a tripod, not a biped. I still can't walk up a stair by myself. I can't walk up a curb by myself. And I've helped 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. But you hear my voice, positive, purposeful, powerful, and pleasant, all because of one word. And the word is smile. SMILE is a great acronym. It stands for Seeing Miracles in Life Every Day. Now, I emphasize it on a regular basis on almost every show. Today, I'm going to emphasize it again because the ability to sort through atrocities and to still find miracles, that's the hallmark of a great person. And that's one of the reasons you're here. Thank God, as I said, we have hundreds of thousands of people that tune in every week, and you're always urging your friends and family to come and join in also. And I'd like to get up to 500,000 listeners because I ask you to always share this with 5 people. That's it, 5. You want to share with 50 and 100 and 500, it's up to you. But at least 5. Everybody commit to 5. That way we touch 1.5 million people, and we want to continue to do that and grow the audience because it's really critical for people to understand that joy is an essential element of living a full, successful life. Joy is a great acronym that stands for Journey of You. That's right. That's what joy really is all about. Journey of You. That journey oftentimes leads to peaks and valleys, and then more peaks and more valleys, and then valleys and peaks. That's just life. It's stuff. There will always be difficulties. There'll always be traumatic and dramatic experiences in life. So what do you do with it? Well, one of the things to do is to learn how to smile. Now, I got to tell you, I do a lot of in-person discussions. And recently I was at a show. We had 1,127 people. And I'm telling the story about Barry Shaw. And people raise their hand and say, hey, Barry Shaw, I've been up for hours. I haven't seen any miracles. And I asked them, are you here? Can you hear? Can you stand still? I can't do that. Can you walk? I can barely do that. You have water to drink? You have family? You have a place to eat? You have food? Every single one of those is a miracle. What's the proof? Simplest proof. 1 million people didn't get out of bed this morning. You know why? They died. Or in the case of recent events, they were killed. You're here. Therefore, you have an obligation to live life to the full. Every single moment, living life to the full, living in joy, living in happiness, living in peace, living in love. That is the way that we dispel the darkness in the world. Now, I got to tell you a very nice little story about my 8-year-old niece. She comes over to me a few weeks ago, and it's even more relevant today. And she says, Uncle Barry, can we spell smile? S-M-I-E-L. I thought about it. Smile, why not? It sounds the same. I asked her how come. Because she says then it would stand for seeing miracles in everyday life. You hear that out of the mouth of an 8-year-old. What was she doing? She was creating the kind of world she wants to live in. Now, CREATE is a wonderful acronym that stands for causing rethinking enabling all to excel. Rethinking is the key element of life, what I call a shift in perspective. Now, it happens to be the title of my latest book called Oh Shift. And you got to be very careful when you pronounce the F in shift, or the other stuff happens. So keep that F in place. Oh, shift. And when we're talking about a shift in perspective, by the way, is very small. We're talking about very small movement, just a little bit out of your comfort zone so that you can see things differently, a new perspective. And if you do that, guess what can happen? You can actually learn how to live life better, because now you can internalize, utilize, and leverage the 6 most important words you will ever learn. These 6 words are: choice, not chance, determines your destiny. Choice, not chance, determines your destiny. How you choose to respond in any given situation will determine not just the movement of your life, but the trajectory, where you want to go and how fast you want to get there. Choice, not chance. Now, I got to tell you in advance that your humble host does use a lot of 4-letter words. I even use a 4-letter FU word, and I do it because of the shock value and it's fun. Now, of course, the 4-letter words that we use, because we live in the world of positive, purposeful, powerful, and pleasant, are love, life, hope, free, gift, play, pray, swim. And the 4-letter FU word is fun. Fun, yes, F-U, capital N, capital N. Now, right away, some purists in the audience are raising their hands and say, hey, Barry Shore, fun's only spelled with 3 letters. Not in our world, where the positive, purposeful, powerful, and pleasant. Fun is spelled F-U, capital N, capital N. So after the show, when you see your family and friends, I want you to point your finger, have a twinkle in your eye, a smile on your face, and say, F you, everybody. But remember to add right away, capital N, capital N. I say, where'd you get that? I said, I listened to Barry Shore and the Joy of Living podcast. He wants to teach the world to F you, capital N, capital N. That will get their attention. And then you can begin to tell them what we're going to discuss today. And again, the title of today's podcast is Why the Jews? Why? Why the Jews? Doesn't it seem like the Jews are always being attacked, are always being picked on? Something's always happening with Jews. Why the Jews? I want to put this in perspective for people, because we have people listening from all over the world. And I'm talking about places in the world where most of the time, in a lot of these countries, they've never seen or met a Jew, because their Jews are very rare. What do you mean rare? Now, I don't think there's more than 15, 16 million Jews in the world. In the world, there are more people who speak Swahili than speak Hebrew. It's a rounding error if you're counting the number of people in China or India. Or we're talking about the number of people in the world, 8+ billion people in the world. The number of Jews is not even 0.2% of 1% of the world's population. It's just a tiny number. So why the Jews? Why are people talking about the Jews all the time? Matter of fact, if it's not Jews, then you're talking about the country called Israel. Now, if you were to look and do a search, if you were to look and say, tell me how many times Israel as a country has been in the news in the past 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 180 days, you will find that it greatly outweighs almost every other country in the world. How can that be? You're talking about an entire country of no more than 9 million people, of whom 20% are not even Jews. They're Arabs. That's right. You're talking about a democracy. It's the only democracy that's surrounded by 22 Arab nations, numbering in the hundreds of millions in total, maybe even over 1 billion people. And you're talking about a group of people that is very diverse, because they come from all over the world. You're talking about a people that's been on the planet for over 4,500 years. So why the Jews? And when we're talking about why the Jews, let's talk about specifically what happened on October 7th, 2023. Today, I'm recording. And it's going to be launched, let me see, on today is the 15th of October. And it'll be launched on October 17th. It'll be 10 days since the almost unspeakable, horrific, diabolical, directed attack upon life, limb, women, children, babies, elderly, simply because they live in the country of Israel. They pose no threat. They were invaded, they were hacked to death, murdered, raped, pillaged, prisoners taken, brought back to the place that is on the map called Gaza. Wantonly, deliberately, purposely, to create terror. That was the point, to create terror. This group that calls themselves Hamas, which, by the way, interesting enough, in the Hebrew language, Hamas means violence. So they are aptly named. Hamas means violence. That's who they are. They make no bones about deliberately targeting and wanting to kill Jews. Kill Jews. It's in the charter of their organization. The organization that was elected by the people of Gaza in 2007 and 2005, the state of Israel, which was running the area called Gaza, which is approximately 25 miles long and plus minus 3 miles wide, abandoned completely the area called Gaza. Not one Israeli, not one Jew lived in Gaza and has not been there for 18 years. In 2007, the people of Gaza overwhelmingly elected Hamas to represent them, knowing full well that Hamas's charter is, and until they are destroyed will be, to kill Jews, to do everything they can to disrupt the state of Israel. It is an organization that is dedicated to hate, to hatred, to death, and to fomenting hatred and death wherever they can. Hamas is a direct offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, what's going to happen over the next 20 to 30 minutes is I will be going into some details that you need to be aware of. Some of these details will go back tens of years, some hundreds of years, some thousands of years. And I urge you all, if you find what I say disturbing or hard to believe, please check me out. Send me notices if you think I'm wrong. I'm more than willing to learn. I study what I'm about to tell you. I'm a student of history, and I'm Jewish. So this has been something that I've known for a long time. It's part and parcel of being Jewish. Not that we are always being attacked, but yes, that in every single generation throughout history, there's always some group that rises up that does want to annihilate us. That just goes with the territory of being Jewish. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? In every generation, from the beginning of the Jewish people, beginning with an amazing man named Abraham, who we call Abraham our father, who, by the way, is recognized by the Arab world as Abraham their father, by the Christian world as Abraham their father. Everybody in the world of a single belief in a single entity called God understands that Abraham was the unique progenitor of not just an idea, of a way of life that recognized that there is a creator in the world, and that creator created the world as a place for ethical, moral beings. When you veer off from being ethical and moral, and you are now in a death cult, you're no longer a descendant of Abraham. You may have another progenitor, but not Abraham. Now, Abraham began his journey along with his wonderful wife, Sarah, more than 4,000 years ago. More than 4,000 years ago. All Jews in the world, all Jews anywhere, everywhere in the world are descended from Abraham and Sarah. It becomes very interesting that Abraham had a son. His name was Ishmael, who was considered the progenitor of the Arab nations, and therefore the beginning and progenitor of what has came to be known as the Muslim world. But that's much later when we discuss history. We'll be there in just a little bit. And Isaac is the firstborn son, the only born son of Abraham and Sarah, the choice son of Abraham and Sarah. And all Jews are descended from Abraham to Isaac, and through Isaac into Jacob. Now, we'll be right back after a brief message, and we urge you, please, patronize the people who support us. We'll be right back after this brief message, so there's more of this coming back. You're going to be fascinated, I believe. We'll be right back just now. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Hey, everybody. You know me, Barry Shore, and you know my story. Standing up in the morning, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, that night being in the hospital, totally, completely paralyzed. Talk about a change of life. I was faced with lots of issues, difficulties, paths forward, if there was to be one. And I'm here to tell you that finding advice from professional people makes all the difference, certainly in my life. And I would urge everybody to consider doing so in your life. And if you've ever had the opportunity to find someone or some two people that are really matched up with you, then you know it makes a difference. I urge you to consider using BetterHelp. BetterHelp, if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, so it's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill in a brief questionnaire, I've done it, to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. This is your opportunity to make a difference and become the best you possible. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/joy of living today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/joy of living. BetterHelp, HELP.com/joy of living. Best wishes. Bye now. Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved, immortal beings, and good-looking people. Remember, you're good-looking, so always looking for and finding the good. We have good in abundance. So we talked about Abraham has a son named Ishmael. He had that son with a woman named Hagar. She was an Egyptian princess. And from there comes what is called the Arab world. Abraham, with his wife Sarah, has a son named Isaac. And Isaac has two sons. He and his wonderful wife, Rebecca, have two sons. One of them is named Esau, and the other is named Jacob. Esau and Jacob, twin brothers. Esau went off on a different path, and he became the world of the Romans and eventually Christianity. Jacob had 12 sons, each one of whom stayed close and created the Jewish nation. So we're descended from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Jacob's 12 sons. There is a very interesting piece here, though, that is fascinating for the world of Islam. So I want to fast forward right now. So in order to fast forward, I have to do two things. Number one, I need to plant a seed, and that is that the Israelites, the sons of Jacob, went down into Egypt because Joseph was the ruler of Egypt. He went down. He was actually sold by his brothers into slavery, whole other show. And he brought his family down because there was famine in the land of Israel. Now, it was not called Israel then. It was the land of the Canaanites, but that was the land that was promised to Abraham. That was the land that was promised to Isaac. That was the land that was promised to Jacob and his sons, that eventually they would come back and reclaim it. So this land was promised to Abraham almost 4,000 years ago. Something to keep in mind right now. The Jews, the Israelites, the sons of Jacob, went down into Egypt, and they were there for several hundred years until God redeemed us, the Jewish people, brought us out of Egypt through miraculous events. Remember, seeing miracles in life every day, the splitting of the Red Sea, and then being in the desert for almost 40 years. During that time in the sojourning in the desert in the second year, a divine revelation took place in front of 3 million people. That divine revelation was the giving of the Bible, or what is known in Hebrew as the Torah, Torah. You can look it up. The Torah was given as divine revelation in front of the people, 2+ million people witnessing it. Very important. It wasn't one person. It wasn't some person going up out into the desert inside, in front of millions of people. And now these millions of people were supported for 40 years in the desert through miraculous events, manna from heaven, et cetera, other things. And then Joshua merited to bring the people in to the land of Canaan. And we, as the Jewish people, were able to conquer the land that had been promised to Abraham, promised to Isaac, promised to Jacob, reclaim the land, settle it, and there live upon the land and produce wonderful, great culture, wonderful products, trading with people throughout the area, building up dynasties, the Davidic dynasty, Solomon's dynasty, and then doing what people do, which is internecine warfare amongst our own selves. Okay, leave that aside. It's a history that you can read about in the biblical accounts. The important thing is that Jews were on the land of what's called Israel up until this very day. This is a very big statement I just made to you. Jews were on the land that is called Israel up until this very day. Now, at many points throughout those thousands of years of history, we were the dominant population on the land. At some points, we were a very tiny minority on the land. But there was no time where the land was absent of all Jews. Sometimes very few Jews, sometimes many more. But the land always had a Jewish presence. I'm going to give two very important data points. One is that around the time of the turn of the millennial, when a new religion called Christianity, which had as their leader Jesus, came into being, well, that took place plus minus 2,000 years ago. Now, the Jews, therefore, have been living on the land for 2,000 years at that point, because that's been there almost 4,000 years. And Christianity became a dominant player in that area that is today called the Middle East, which has names of countries such as Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Turkey, Lebanon, Israel, etc., even Egypt. The Christian world flourished somewhere around the years 100, 200, 300, and 400 when Christianity took over from the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire, at least the what was called the Eastern Roman Empire, having its headquarters in Constantinople, that became the state religion, Christianity. And Christians were the dominant peoples throughout the known world in that area. And Jews were always part of that world, but a minority, but still living on the land that was called Israel. However, by that time, the Romans, predating the the Romans in around the year 70 or 100 of the Common Era had conquered the area called Israel, and the Jews had risen up in revolt several times over the course of 150 years. And on the final rebellion, the Romans had put that down in a particularly brutal fashion. Romans were brutal, but they're particularly brutal. And what they did is they went to the capital, which was then in a place called Jerusalem, and they leveled the mountain called Jerusalem, which, let's say, rose up, we'll just pick a number and say it rose up 100 feet. They leveled the top 30 feet of it, plowed it under in typical Roman fashion, and plowed it with salt so nothing would ever grow there, and then renamed the area Palestine so that it be uprooted from its traditional name, which is Judea, named for Judean, Jews. So the Romans were calling it now Palestine. That's the origin of this term called Palestine, but it was done as a put down to the Jewish people. They lost, the Romans won. Now, of course, the Romans are no more. The Christians took over from the Romans. And then around the year 630 of the Common Era, because 622, something happened, something amazing happened. A prophet arose in a place that is today called Saudi Arabia. His name was Muhammad, and he had visions that God spoke directly to him and gave him over revelation. Now, he went to the peoples in the area. There were two great cities. One is called Mecca, one was called Medina. And he offered to the people there that they should follow him and his new way of doing things. And he was able to rally a number of the local tribes to come with him because they had been polytheists. He was preaching a unified God, one God, and he offered that to the Jews. Well, again, Jews had always been living in that part of the world, and there were approximately 800, maybe 1,000 Jews living in that area, and I believe it was Mecca at the time, and he offered that they should come and follow him. Now, Jews have been keeping their religion, our religion, since the time of Abraham, or certainly the time of Moses. So that goes back, by the time 600 came around, more than 1,600 years, maybe even 2,000 years. We don't give up our religion that easily. So we said, no, thank you, but no. And Muhammad didn't like that, and he came and did battle and slaughtered almost all the Jews, took a number of Jewish women captive, married one of them, interestingly enough. It's a whole other story. But suffice it to say that this was the beginning of the battle between Muslims and Jews, which continues to this very day. Now, in a very short history of Islam, within 2 generations, Islam itself split from direct descendant of Muhammad to a offshoot, a nephew of Muhammad. And those two groups became known in the Islamic world as Sunni Muslims and Shiite Muslims. And they are known today, Shiite Muslims, as Iranians. They are followers of the cousin, the nephew of Muhammad. They're Shiites. Sunni Muslims are Saudi Arabians, Jordan, the Hashemite kingdom, etc. And there is bad blood between them. They've been fighting on and off for almost 1,400 years. Warfare is part and parcel of the Muslim world. The Muslims were extremely, extremely successful in their wars. They rampaged across all of North Africa, wiping out any communities that were there prior, most of them Christian. Remember, Christians ruled the entire Mediterranean world. They inherited the Roman world. They went up as far as into what was today Iraq, over into Iran, over into what is today called Turkey. When took over the then Roman Empire in the it took many, many years, hundreds of years, but in 1453, the city called Constantinople fell and now is no longer Christian. It's Muslim, Byzantium. And then this entire battle continued with the Muslims moving into what is today Greece and all the way up to the gates of Vienna, up until the early part of the 17th century. And if it wasn't for one particular battle at the gates of Vienna, almost all of Europe would be Muslim today. And the same thing happened in North Africa, then going into Spain. Muslims controlled most of Spain up until, again, the 15th century, 1492, when the Christians were Catholics actually, able to get together and drive out the Muslims. But the Muslims at one point up in Spain into France at the Battle of Tours. Somebody named Charles Martel fought back and saved Europe from the Muslims, pushed them all back into North Africa. But still in all, the Muslim world was dominant throughout North Africa, the Middle East, and certainly up into what is called today Turkey, etc., etc. People living under Muslim rule were, at best, second-class citizens. It's called dhimmitude. And dhimmis were under the control of any Muslim, so that if Muslims were walking on a sidewalk and a dhimmi was walking on a sidewalk, the dhimmi had to move off a sidewalk. And this, again, was not just Jews that lived under Muslim rule, which there were many, many Jewish communities under Muslim rule, but also Christians. And the Muslims ruled oftentimes with an iron fist. Many different dynasties coming and going over the course of almost 1,400 years. So things shifted a lot. But suffice it to say, it was not an easy life, certainly for Jews. So that Muslims always saw Jews in a lowly position as basically servants, servitude, slaves, etc. When in fact, now we're going to very fast forward, when in fact Jews in Europe became full-fledged citizens, and they were able not only to establish their credentials as citizens of European countries, but they joined armed services in those countries. They now took on a different role as beings not in servitude, but in service to a state. So as an example of something, and this is very important for the history of what we're going to discuss in the next 10 minutes or so. In 1870, Germany and France went to war. 1870, 1871, Franco-Prussian War. The Germans won. The Prussians, actually, because Germany had just become a united entity. We never called a country before that, but the Prussian beat the French. Well, of course, any country that loses looks for a scapegoat. And there was one French officer who was Jewish. In the entire French army, there was one officer who was Jewish. He was a captain. His name was Alfred Dreyfus, Dreyfus. Now, Alfred Dreyfus was, of course, accused of spying for the enemy. Wasn't true. It was actually French officers who were spying for the enemy, but that's beside the point. And this French officer was accused, certainly tried, and was tried for treason and found guilty. And he was dishonored in front of the entire French military and an outdoor display. And around the whole area, everybody knew Dreyfus was guilty. The Jew, the citizens of Paris were calling for the killing of Jews, et cetera, et cetera. It was a very difficult situation. Dreyfus, the Jew, had betrayed the country. Not true, but that was what was portrayed. He was sent to Devil's Island. Well, there were two people who actually this affected three people. One was Dreyfus's wife. She was relentless, understanding he was innocent. There was a newspaper person. His name was Emile Zola, who became famous for writing one of the most interesting essays in the past 200, 300 years of history in European literature called I Accuse, J'accuse, you should look it up, in which he accuses the French military of setting up Dreyfus. Dreyfus served 12 years on Devil's Island, almost went crazy. He was brought back and then a new trial, and he was found, of course, to be innocent, which he was. But what happened at the trial was that an Austrian Jew was sent by his newspaper, not because he was a Jew, just because he was Austrian, to go to Paris and to report on the trial. And while he was there, he saw the vehemence, the hatred that the populace, Christian populace, not Muslims, there were no Muslims living in Paris at the time, towards the Jew, hating the Jew, about to kill Jews. And he recognized that until and unless Jews had a place, a country of their own, they would always be at the mercy of other people. They could never live a full life as a full human being. This person became his name was Theodor Herzl, Herzl, and he became the founder of Zionism. And we'll be right back after this brief message. Don't go away. It's only another maybe 10 minutes, but we got to finish up. And I hope this is intriguing to you. We'll be right back after this brief message. Good day, everybody. Oh, something special for you. Amazing. Sometimes a great notion comes into the world and causes a shift that benefits everyone. Isn't that wonderful? Everyone benefits. This time it's called Einstein Cares. That's right, like Albert Einstein. EinsteinCares.com. EinsteinCares. EinsteinCares.com. Go there and sign up to be aware of when the site launches. Because guess what this site is all about? Its mission is to give $1 billion to charity without costing any giver a penny. Okay, I'm going to say it again. The mission is to give $1 billion to charity without costing any giver a penny. And it's based upon something everybody loves to do. Shop, have fun, give money at no cost. Go to EinsteinCares.com. That's EinsteinCares.com and register now so that when the site launches, you will be amongst the first to know about it. So you can shop, earn money, and give money at no cost. What a wonderful world to even be thinking about these things. EinsteinCares.com. Do it today. You'll thank me, and you know you love thanking me. Best wishes. Bye now. Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved immortal beings, and good-looking people. I'm Barry. What are you telling me here? I got all this history, but what about today? What's going on? Okay, we're going to fast forward because we only have about 10, 15 minutes to make all this happen. Theodor Herzl had in his mind that it was imperative for the Jews to have their own homeland. Well, Theodor Herzl was as divorced from Jewish tradition as is possible. He knew intellectually that there was a place called Israel, or Zion, as he said, because it's mentioned throughout all the Psalms. It's mentioned in the Bible. Jerusalem is mentioned tens and tens and tens of times in the Bible and throughout Jewish literature. And there's always, I repeat, always has been a Jewish presence in what is called the land of Israel. Always. There may have been a minority of a minority, but there were always Jews living there because this is our ancestral homeland. Theodor Herzl invested his entire life remaining, only a few years, his vigor completely drained, but he gave everything to building up the dream called the return to Zion, the return to the ancestral homeland. And he petitioned everybody from the Pasha, who was the head of the Ottoman Empire at the time. The Ottoman Turks controlled all of what is today the Muslim world, and Saudis didn't. The Saudis didn't come into power until after the First World War, and the Ottomans sided in the First World War with Germany and Austria-Hungary and chose the wrong side because they lost, and therefore the French and the British divided up the Ottoman Empire because it was disbanded. And that's how the French and the British came to control what is today the Middle East. The French going into Iraq and parts of Syria, and the British taking over other parts of Syria, Lebanon, and what is today Israel and Egypt and such. So it's a very convoluted, confusing history that is made more interesting and more difficult by competing forces. What are those competing forces? Three main competing forces. On one hand, you have Jews wanting to return to their ancestral homeland, which has never been unlived in, if you can say such a thing, by Jews for thousands of years. Thousands. You also have the Arab world, which wanted to have its land restored. And in this case, now the House of Saud became on the ascendancy. They were fighting against the Hashemite kingdom under the Jordanians, who had a very good claim to the holy land, the holy spots and such like that. And here's where it gets really fascinating, because under Islamic ideal, and I guess law even, once a country or an area is ruled by Muslims, it can never revert out of Muslim control. So when the Muslims controlled the land, what is today the land of Israel, which was then under Ottoman control. Now the Ottomans were Turks and they were also Muslims, but they ruled with a very light hand, and all they cared about was how much money they could get from taxes and such. So things like the Al-Aqsa Mosque and other places were put in place in the land of Judea, Israel, the suzerainty under the Ottomans and such. And very few Arabs lived there because the land was inhospitable. Jews lived there because this is our ancestral home. Now, what happened after Theodor Herzl and the dream of Zion and returning to Zion, now you're in the 1880s. And this was a time of great turmoil throughout what was then the Russian Empire, because the Russians themselves had all kinds of difficulties with Jews. They didn't want them. People didn't want the Jews because the Jews were not Christians and they weren't going to convert. And there were great deal of hatred from the Russians to the Jews. And this was a time where lots of pogroms were taking place. Pogrom is where police sanctioned rampaging mobs would go around raping and pillaging and killing Jews. And this was happening throughout the area that was going back and forth between Poland and Russia. And then all of these 1880s, 1890s leading up to the 1905, which was the beginning of the Russian Revolution, and then 1917 and the actual Russian Revolution. And communism, the turmoil was beyond anybody's ability to explain if I had another 3 or 4 hours, which we might do, by the way, just another show. My point is that they were Jews, thank God, by the hundreds of thousands, if not the millions, that were emigrating, trying to leave that area of Russia, Poland, by any means possible. Many, many hundreds of thousands were able to come to the United States of America and contribute greatly. They came with nothing, less than nothing, nothing. And over time, were able to build themselves up because they were given the freedom to do so. And a certain percentage, a large percentage, went to the land called Zion. They were moved by idealism to go there and drain the swamps. Many of them died in the process, drain the swamps, and try and bring the land to grow fruits and vegetables and bring back bounty, because it was known as a land of bounty. That's what the Bible said, but it hadn't seen bounty in so long. Well, guess what? The Jews, who were the original owners of the land, because of God's great blessing, saw a land begin to be fruitful, and they multiplied. And of course, when you have things happening that are fruitful and multiplying, you're attracting people. So many people came, Arabs primarily, because they wanted to work. And so now Jews and Arabs are working together, Jews hiring Arabs and such, Jews buying land. Again, the 1880s, 1900s, before the First World War, they were buying land from the Turks. The Turks lost the First World War. And now who do you buy land from? Because who has deeds and such like that? So now the British, which had, during World War I, had made a decision to give that land that is called Transjordan and the land of Israel to the Jews because they were biblical Zionists in the United Kingdom cabinet at the time, just before World War I and during World War I. And then after World War I, because the Saudi Arabs had been helpful, they needed to split it up because the Saudis didn't want to have Jews there. So they said, well, we can't take it away entirely. So they partitioned it. And I'm making the story now very short because of time, but suffice it to say that over the next 20, 30 years, from 1918 until 1948, there were lots of clashes between Muslims and Jews. Not Jews to Muslims, Muslims to Jews. Arabs did not want Jews living there. That's simple. There were pogroms whenever possible. The most famous was in 1929 in a place called Hebron, where tens and tens of Jews were just slaughtered. Not Israelis. There was no country of Israel. The Arabs, the Muslims, did not want Jews living there. That was at one time a Muslim country, and you can't have it. Jews out. Jews weren't going to leave. This is our homeland, has been for thousands of years. So now in the next 5 minutes, we're going to come up to speed where we are today. Where we are today is exactly where we have been for the past 60, 70 years. In 1948, the United Nations voted and awarded the state of Israel its right to exist. Right alongside, by the way, plenty of land for Arabs. 1948, when the United Nations granted the state of Israel its independence, at that point, Arab armies invaded. Arab armies invaded from Egypt, from Lebanon, from Syria, from Jordan. Armies. It is not possible that the nascent state country of Israel was able to defeat these invading armies. Not possible. It is only by the hand of God. Somehow we won. They backed off. 1956, there was another war with Egypt primarily. Israel won. And it would have won in big numbers, but the restraint of the United States says pull back. Have to pull back when the big country says to. 1967, again, multiple Arab states were about to invade the nation state of Israel. They had backing from Russia, the USSR. They had every possible modern weapon. And if it was not for the brass balls of Israel and its leaders to do a preemptive strike and eliminate the Egyptian Air Force on the ground, where they had dozens, by the hundreds of planes lined up, wingtip to wingtip, in perfect order, ready to go and take off in the sky and annihilate Israel. Israel went in and eliminated the Egyptian Air Force. If it wasn't for that, there would not be an Israel today. 1967, in 6 days, the country of Israel not only staved off invasion, but fought back the armies and rendered them incapable of attacking further. It was a miraculous victory. And not only that, for the first time in thousands of years, the city of Jerusalem was united under Jewish sovereignty. The first time in thousands of years. 1967. 6 years later, 1973, on the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, 4 armies of Arab nations invaded Israel. Thought impossible, because why would they do that? We just destroyed their armies. Because they're relentless. We almost lost the entire country of Israel. Able to regroup, fought back, fought against the enemy. And not only that, we were able to take the Golan Heights, which was an extremely important, advantageous place for Israel to be. That was 73. That was 50 years ago. In 1980, there was a war in Lebanon, and there's been terrible things happening throughout the decades, mostly because Jews want to live in peace with Arab neighbors. I will repeat it, because Jews want to live in peace with Arab neighbors. They will reach out for any possible opportunity, only to be rebuffed. Arabs don't want that. What they want is the elimination of the Jewish state. Let me repeat it. What Arabs want, we're talking about radical Islam, which is the dominant force in the area today, wants the elimination of Israel, wants the destruction of the Jewish people. I will repeat it. Wants the elimination of Israel, the destruction of the Jewish people. And I don't mean just the Jewish people living in Israel. It's in their charter. Why the Jews? One of the most interesting ideas that came out of World War II, I think it was just in 1939, after the beginning of World War II, September 1st, 1939 was the beginning. The quip going around the world was, how did the war start? Well, it started because of the Jews and the bicycle thieves. Jews and bicycle thieves? Why bicycle thieves? And the answer was, why the Jews? Why the Jews? The Jews have been an object of hatred, jealousy, anger for thousands of years. And the primary reason is because we brought to the world the idea of a conscience, of a moral life, a life built upon trust, a life built upon love, a life built upon joy, a life built upon happiness, a life built upon peace, not the sword. If necessary, we will fight. We prefer to live in harmony. The essence of the Jew is peace, happiness, joy, and love. So as we do on every show when we complete, we're going to reach out and we're going to hug the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people listening. I hope this has been helpful to you today. HUG stands for heartfelt, unlimited giving. On the count of three. 1, 2, 3. And our blessing is go forth, live exuberantly, spread the seeds of joy, happiness, peace, and love. Go mad. Go make a difference.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Joy of Living podcast. Now that's another step towards your healthier, happier, and wealthier life. Never hesitate to do good in the world, no matter what the situation. Join us for another upbeat discussion next time at barryshore.com. And be sure to leave a rating and subscribe to the show to get more conversations like this. And remember to share it with your family and friends too. See you on the next episode.